Good evening, everyone. I am your host, Jason Myles. I know you guys cannot see me at the moment as I am having tremendous computer problems that are causing me to be invisible. But that's okay. As long as you can hear the tone of my melodious voice, we should be A-okay. And we have a doozy of a show for you today. Thank you all for joining us. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live. We're constantly adding cross streams with other channels and adding new shows. Tomorrow, we'll be doing the Mau Mau Hour with the Pascual Romero. If you are a patron, you'll be able to contribute your opinions live via chat or call in. That's right. The Mau Mau Hour is a call-in show for patrons only. And the only way you can be a part of that is by becoming a patron at patreon.com/BitterLakePresents. Don't forget, Thursday, we're going to be doing our second installment of our bi-monthly news show with the guys from Left Reckoning. That's always a good time. Additionally, if you like what we do here and you want to see it continue and you have the means to further support the channel, don't forget the champagne room we're doing tonight. Will it be a call-in? I don't know. If we can get these technical problems worked out, we can have the call-in show again. We haven't had it for the last few nights, so it will be fun to get the call-in show. I'm sure tonight you guys will definitely have some opinions voiced. Also, many of our videos are becoming not so much demonetized, but they're not allowing us to run ads on them because of the content being told. I didn't know the Indian New Deal was so controversial. So again, if you guys have the means and feel so inclined, like what you're hearing and seeing, you don't get to see me, but who cares anyway? Drop a buck or two in the old tip jar. It goes a long way to help keep the show going. And Friday, we have the big announcement. Tickets will go on sale for our live show in LA. It'll be a joint venture with Ben Burgess, Give Them an Argument, as well as Left Reckoning. So as soon as I have that link, I will be posting the holy hell out of it. Don't you worry. Pascal and MT have the night off. That's okay. I think we can do this. See? You guys are like, oh, look, there I am. There I'm not. There I am. There I'm not. You can see. Insane. And YouTube, yes, JB, YouTube is being ridiculous. Literally every video that we do, every stream we do, has to be reviewed by a live person. I have to go in to the back end and ask for a live review. And a few shows, they go, nope, you are still in violations of our standards. And I'm like, is it this?
You'd be surprised how many people love to crack.
Is that what it is that makes them so angry? I don't know. I do not know. But let me bring in our guest for today. I was going to try to play the intro clip that we made. But again, because of all the issues that I'm having right now, I won't even bother with that, sadly. I'm not worried about killing time either, because me and this gentleman can talk forever. The last live show that I did as a musician was in his hometown of New Mexico, and it was a nightmare of a show. It actually didn't even happen. But because of this wonderful man talking me and the rest of the band off a ledge, we had the best, most relaxing 1,800-mile drive home I've ever had in my life. I am honored to call this man a friend. He is musician extraordinaire. I'm not going to lie. I am jealous of his abilities with a guitar. And some of you may know him for his bass and even his singing. He's my good friend, Pascual Romero.
What's up? Oh, there's my son in the background too.
So as of right now, until I can get this thing figured out, I don't know why it keeps doing that. And it doesn't seem to want me on the screen. It's just you. That's okay. You're a good-looking fella. You have a nice groomed beard. You have a room full of cool stuff. You even have a hat with your name on it.
Yeah, just in case people forget.
How are you?
Good, man. I've been real good, man. It's really good to see him. Well, hear you now. I saw you.
We saw each other for like a minute, and then I tried to, take myself off the screen for the opening, and all of a sudden, I can't get back on.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could help, man, but you are very far away from here.
You are in New Mexico, and I'm in Old Mexico.
That is correct. Not the same country, believe it or not.
I'm nowhere near you, actually, because I'm on the coast.
Yeah. You're a haul from here.
So I wanted to talk with you. I was thinking, if I'm going to do a show about the piece I wrote, I definitely have to get on not just my music homie, because we have music homies, but a music homie that actually spent time in the new metal world.
Yeah, that is true. We didn't call it that at the time, but it kind of got renamed once the reputation caught up with it, I guess.
What did you guys call it before?
I don't know, man. I think it was kind of like people would call it. It was like groove metal, rap metal. There was.
I remember rap metal.
Yeah, like it was like I never played in like a rap metal band, but it was definitely groove metal. But in hindsight, everyone calls it new metal anyway. So, which is fine by me. I at this point in my life, I'm too old to get into semantics about subgenres of metal.
I hate subgenres of everything. Basic genres, so I know what kind of music I'm walking in the door for is fine. But once you start getting into micro genres, I did a show with a young man not too long ago. A young kid. He's like 23, 24. He's a big new metal fan, and I was like, why? And he was like, I love Limp Bizkit, and I was like, why? And he wanted me on the show to talk about new metal for some reason. Young black kid, right? Good kid. For those of you who watched This Is Revolution, it was Gregory Hardin II who's running for state office in Oklahoma. Good kid, really like him, but he had all these subgenres for new metal, and I was like, what do you look, man? Maybe I'm old or some shit, but it's just metal, dude. Just call it metal. Don't try to super classify it, because no one cares.
Yeah, I mean, especially at that level, it's not. It's not. People don't get granular in that world, and with good reason, I think, at least in that new metal, whatever that bubble is. I think it's kind of funny to really try to get real detail on that, because it's just, it's I don't know. It's not that nuanced.
I don't play death metal, bro. I play Swedish polka death metal. We got accordion. So someone says, don't bust on the granularity that is yacht metal. Well,
Creed?
I think we both have friends that played on that 70,000 tons of metal cruise.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every year I know a few people who make it out to that
one. So. But where were you in 1999? Were you in LA in 99?
I moved to LA in 2000, so I was still here in Albuquerque in '99, playing music. I wasn't. So I had already kind of touched in on what would be called new metal at that
Mhm.
point. And I think New Mexico kind of was a place where you would hear a bit of it. Maybe because, especially places like Albuquerque had a big, I mean, first off, the state is mostly Latino, and a lot of that, like a lot of the culture, the music culture that comes with being a Latino in the '90s, which was everything from. I mean, there's a lot of thrash in that world. There was a lot of punk, but there was also, of course, a lot of hip hop, and a lot of, there were some pretty huge Latino rappers by then. Like, Cypress Hill was huge, and also, in my opinion, did contribute to what became new metal.
Well, let me stop you right there. And why do you say they contributed? In what way?
Well, you kind of have to look back at the the like who was affiliated with who in the early to mid '90s. And when you look at another band I'm affiliated with, Fear Factory, um, they and their group of kind of LA bands that were bubbling up around that time, were very deeply connected to Cypress Hill and a lot of the other East LA rap and stuff. They were all friends, and so it was like, by the album, I believe, I'm trying to think of which Fear Factory album it is now. I think it was Digimortal. Cypress Hill ended up being on that record. And I think the fact that scene had that crossover in the '90s in LA definitely influenced kind of the path of the music, especially on the rap rock side. And kind of, and especially with a band like Cypress Hill, or a group like Cypress Hill, they were so influential in the kind of pop zeitgeist in the '90s that I think it would be hard to say you did any kind of mainstream music and didn't get somewhat influenced by an artist like that.
It's interesting. Were you a fan of, side note, what was that project? Prophets of Rage?
Oh yeah, I actually am not real familiar with it. I remember it happening, but I honestly couldn't even name a song.
I think they just did covers of each other's stuff. I could be wrong. That's all I need is like Chuck D to call up,
Yeah.
We didn't do covers. Do you find that people use new metal as a pejorative? Speaking of bands like Rage Against the Machine, like for some reason, people, like, I made one of the show co-hosts on Saturday because he read the piece, and then I was on his. He has a show on Call In, and we were going over the piece, and new metal, of course, because of the piece about Woodstock, and we will talk about Woodstock '99. Don't just give us a second.
All right.
He was asking me about new metal, so I made him this like playlist. I was like, I'm gonna make you a new metal playlist without putting Korn and Limp Bizkit on it. And he was going, well, isn't Rage Against the Machine not new metal? I was like, they're kind of the epitome of new metal.
Yeah.
What is more new metal than some dude rapping over a drop D guitar?
Yep. Yep. I agree. I don't think there's and that's the thing. Because it's such a kind of, it's a weirdly nebulous genre. There's a lot that gets sort of enveloped in it, and there's a lot that doesn't really sound the same on either end of it. There's some really kind of heavy, low tuned, harsh vocal kind of new metal, and then of course there's your rap over drop tuned groove riffs, and then and there's everything in between. But I think that maybe new metal really was defined by kind of what became the what the sort of fan base as it looked on MTV, not necessarily on the streets, but like when you looked at like a Korn video or a Korn concert, like there's a demographic to that, and it may not necessarily reflect what it really was like out in the music scene, but because of these bands getting big the way they were on this, like, TRL level of fame, it certainly kind of spoke to a certain group of people that were always represented as being the fans, and that sort of plays into the Woodstock '99 conversation.
Well, yeah, and I do want to say this before we end the new metal conversation and pivot to Woodstock '99, and we can continue this new metal conversation because we're gonna. Um, it always felt to me when I was writing the piece for Woodstock '99, I was doing the reading on all the Woodstocks. One thing that actually kind of when I was doing research on record sales and kind of revisiting TRL clips and forgetting that Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and Korn were kind of TRL staples. I wouldn't say as much as the Backstreet Boys, but they definitely were there a lot, and they were kind of MTV favorites. Headbangers Ball is over at this point,
Yeah.
so the only place to hear this stuff is like the main MTV. So this music has become pop music, and it is to some degree the music of the suburbs, the music of mall culture. And it just felt to me that the new metal moniker, much like the grunge moniker, is a media creation more than it is you and your buddies going, let's start a new metal band.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just looking at kind of my early days in LA, when I joined a couple different bands that would have been considered new metal, they didn't say they were a new metal band. They'd say, well, our influences are Tool and Pantera and Faith No More, and when you name those bands, it's like, you don't call those new metal bands, although I'd argue they definitely had a lot to do with new metal, but it's like just something that happened with people trying to sort of maybe not necessarily emulate those bands, but take those influences and sort of jam them together into something that's a little more maybe rhythmically steady and poppy. It just, again, none of those bands ever called themselves new metal bands. They called themselves metal bands, maybe groove or thrash, but they wouldn't call themselves new metal.
Jeremy says, when has media not named a music genre? I don't think it's so much about media naming a music genre, but creating one from the name. Grunge. I refuse to believe that Kurt and the rest of the guys were like, let's start a grunge band. Hardcore band, it's a punk band, it's a rock band, and grunge is the furthest thing from their vocabulary when starting this music. And a lot of those guys kind of hate the moniker.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way for new metal. I think some people embrace monikers, right? Especially in the subgenres of worlds, because that becomes a market niche.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a death metal guy. I'm going to sell the same 30,000 albums, the same 500 seat venues.
Yep. Well, and there's some truth to that. I mean, there's bands I've been in. For instance, the band Pathology, which is an extreme metal band. I just was like, yeah, it's death metal. Like, that's all I really thought of it as. And when I got out into the scene and we were touring and stuff, people kept referring to slam metal, and I'm like, what the fuck is slam metal? But so we didn't call ourselves that, but everyone else called us that. And then there's this genre that sort of came up around a very specific type of extreme metal that was, I don't even really know how to describe it, because to me it's like, it's not like, I don't have the ear to pick that out of other brutal metal, but then it turned out it was like, oh well, leaning into that a little bit ended up making it easier to be paired with other bands that were popular in that subgenre. It made it easier to market the record, basically. So in a way, it's like, like you said, the industry sort of names it, the media sort of creates it, or even if kids do, but like the someone latches onto it and lifts it up to where it becomes something you can, becomes the shelf you can put the records on. And so it gets, I don't know, like, for better or worse. I mean, it is okay to lean into it, I suppose, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and nitpick over like whether it's
I've never met an artist that's like, oh, bro, that's not what we are. You know?
Yeah.
At least a serious one.
Yeah.
Like, I remember we were in the UK, me and Cindy, and we had this little bitty label, dude. Little label. It was like a dude, right? It's just a dude in his little shitty apartment paying to release these bullshit CDs. And so he goes, as he's working up a press release while we're showing us the press release because we did a tour out there, and he goes, I'm calling you neo noir. We're like, yeah, neo noir, and we would say that like, oh, and no one knew what the fuck that was, right? And so then we got to write up in something, and they called us alt doom industrial rock. I was like, okay,
that's interesting. I feel like at a point you stack too much on the plate, and then you start, food starts falling off, and it's because I'm like, when someone says doom, I'm like, oh, I like doom industrial. Yeah, I like industrial. And they're like rock. I'm like, are you going the other direction now? Or
what's just so rocking.
Oh, I just saw in chat someone talking smack about extreme vocals. That's I don't know.
Another category, because again, when you do music, right, like you said, you were in Pathology, like, it's just a death metal band, and then someone comes up to me and be like, dude, this is the most extreme grind, death grind, core grind, death, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And we did a show, the Bitter Lake did a show, and this kid goes, what do you guys call yourselves? It's like Bitter Lake. He goes, no, what kind of music is this? And I was like, it's like punky metal, I don't know, punk. And he goes, nah, man, this is hyphy metal.
Oh no.
I'm like, is it because there's a couple black guys in the crew?
Oh no. That's a funny thing though, because like there was, I remember when I was talking to someone, this is back after I was in this moment, and I was interviewing with this kid in Virginia or something, and she was like, like she's like, well, what, like she called what I did Latin metal, and I was like in what way? Like, I mean, am I playing bass in Spanish, or like, I don't like, like, I mean, I appreciate that, like, you're recognizing that we're here, but I'm like, that the music itself doesn't really bear the influence, or maybe if it does, it's not intentional, and it's like, they talk about bands like, of course, Sepultura, or more into the new metal world, like Il Nino, where, they're like, it's like Latin metal. It's like, well, I mean, to be fair, there are some definite Latin things in, especially the more new metal stuff that they did. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think they once set out to be like part of that specifically. And I find it a little kind of disarming when someone's like, making it like adding that to the thing, and it's like, I mean, again, I think it's important to recognize the culture that is in the music, and I think it really matters in the sense that, like, metal and punk, since their inception, had a lot of people of color, and a lot of it was overlooked because they got sort of washed out by sort of the people that were the faces of that world. And you look at like Bay Area thrash, there's like not a band that doesn't have some person of color, usually someone Hispanic. I mean, but it's like to me that is important to recognize, but it's like, that's not what the music really is. So, I don't know if we need to staple that onto the front of the CD, but
well, speaking of branding, No festival knows branding like Woodstock. Woodstock 1969 and 1999. To many, one is the embodiment of the triumph of the hippie counterculture, peace and love, and classic music that stands the test of time as anti-war and anti-establishment anthems. Woodstock 99, however, is viewed as the antithesis of the progressing framing of the original, and its second coming 25 years later in 1994. But was this juxtaposition always so stark? Woodstock 99 is vilified for billing so many heavy acts that worked the crowd up into a frenzy that many say caused riots. Well, today we're going to discuss just that. So now I want to talk about Woodstock. Woodstock 69. Do you have any opinions on 69?
I think that it is, you know, I'm not going to spoil your article here, but I think the image of it my entire life was sold very differently than the reality of it, and I think that you know, it certainly is a very warm and fuzzy bit of nostalgia, and you know, a lot of very important people in music performed. But yeah, I've, you know, my dad, being who he is, was always like, don't believe what they tell you about stuff like Woodstock. You know, it's just not how it went down.
I mean, we could have some article spoilers. I hope people still read it. There should be a link in the description of the show for the latest article in Sublation magazine, which originally was titled "Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? Selling the Counterculture." And of course, I was denied my title. I just wanted to tweet that title out with the hopes that Dave Mustaine would retweet it.
Oh man. What was their objection to it?
You know, it's a more of an academic journal, and you know, people don't know what it's about when you have a title like that.
Okay, yeah.
So just make it simple. I mean, every little chapter in the article also is named after a song.
I didn't notice that, but now I have to go back and look.
It was originally, it got taken out.
Oh, okay.
I got to show you like the original if I could find it. It was pretty. I try to be clever with that stuff, and I always get like the kibosh. So I
man, you're too much for these people, man.
Too much for these people. Like, who do you think's reading this? You're next to a piece about Adorno, man. but in all seriousness, I'm a firm believer that 69 was a cluster F in the same vein as Fire Festival. And I also believe that Michael Lang was a mess. And, you know, the same man that gave you Woodstock, which almost killed like 50,000 people because they had the wiring in the mud and it rained the second day.
Amazing.
Like, I don't think people really understand. Like when you talk to old school people, like a good friend of mine used to work for the Grateful Dead, like from the Ken Kesey acid test days till Jerry died. And he talks about they used to have to ground buildings and shit. There was no grounding anywhere in the building. Yep. And I think the first time I met you, we were playing at Evangelos, the downstairs.
Yep.
And I had this old amp from the 60s, had this Sun head, and I was just sending off sparks so bad that Cindy touched me and there was an arc. There's no ground on my amp.
Oh man.
So I don't think people understand the logistical problems. Just putting a festival together, do you know as well as I know, putting a show together is a nightmare, even at a club.
Oh yeah.
So imagine a festival that you're expecting to have 300,000 people, and you move locations the week of, and that's what happened with Woodstock 69. They move locations week of, because the city that they originally want to have it in doesn't want to be there. And I'll back up even more. The original impetus of Woodstock was never some sort of celebration about peace and love or the anti-war movement. It was always a money-making venture with the idea with two venture capitalists, the two original, I don't want to say promoters, but the guys behind the money guys behind it were budding venture capitalists that put an ad out in the newspaper looking for things to invest in. And one of the guys, there's 4 people total. I can't remember the dude's name. He was a producer, and he produced Dead Man's Curve for Jan and Dean. I think was the biggest thing that he had done. And he had another friend, of course, Michael Lang, who had done a smaller festival successfully, apparently. And they were like, we want to build a studio in Woodstock, New York. And we think that a good way to do it is we threw a concert for like 50,000 people or so. These guys thought it was a good idea. They're like, you hippie dudes seem to know the logistics. And as they're planning out, they sold a bunch of tickets. I think they sold like 100,000 tickets or something like that. They were able to get a loan. One of the investors was able to get a loan on his trust fund because he was an heir to like the Polydent throne. So, you know, the notion that this was like a hippie love fest is kind of funny. Because it was always a money-making venture, and as some people know, or you guys might not know, they didn't even have the ticket booths set up to take tickets and charge. So when people found out that there was a hole in the gate, they ran to whatever phone they could get to and told all their buddies it's a free show. Because there's a lot of people on the fence about going. They don't, is it really worth $6? So everybody just, they bum rushed the show. There was about 50,000 people in there, and they decided there was some people in the planning team that was like, well, they came here with money anyway, we might as well charge them. And it was Michael Lang that says, no, we'll have a ride on our hands. And I think it was like maybe a 5-minute conversation they have, and they let everybody in. So it's a free festival. So first and foremost, it's a free festival, so the vibe is going to be very different if you didn't pay for shit.
Oh yeah. That is 100% true. And you see that when things go well, when things don't go well, if people paid money, the attitude is very different than if it was, like a free show got rained out or something, so you're dealing with a lot of upset people. Understandably so, but you also have to go into planning with that possibility in mind. So you have to I think Lang is one of those guys that he strikes me as the kind of person who would have always thought he thinks things are working, and it's usually on account of the fact that there's someone else doing most of the work.
That sounds like the big guys in festivals.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of footage of the man attending meetings, but it's not. I mean, the guy, just. He in Woodstock 99, he holds up in the office and just kind of watches everything happen, or goes to the stage while things were still cool. And it's just to me, I don't think he had a good eye on the entirety of the situation, and the way things were handled was very poor. But I don't think that's new for the guy. So I think Woodstock 69 wasn't necessarily even, people think like, well, maybe it's just they lucked out. It's like, they lucked out that the crowd didn't get electrocuted, but people still died there. Like it wasn't just like nothing happened. It was actually not a great situation by modern standards. Definitely not. Anyone dying at a show is a big deal nowadays. So, I don't know, take what you will from that, but I think that the writing was already on the wall. I guess 94, I don't really remember hearing too much about. But
94 is a similar situation to 69. Like we have to remember that in 69, you also have people leaving in mass after the second day. And by the third day, no one's there. Um, what what makes 69 iconic, and this is my opinion, is the fact that a documentary crew said, "Hey, we want to film a movie," and they were like, "Okay." They didn't really care.
Right.
And after it was all said and done, and they got hit with all these lawsuits, they got hit with like 80 lawsuits after the show. Whatever you guys heard in those documentaries about Woodstock 99, that happened in 69. They trashed the farm in 69. It took them about a week or so to clean up the junk. One person sued them because they said their cow stopped producing milk after the show. And from a neighboring farm. Like most of the lawsuits were from neighboring farms that got, damaged from the kids. Remember, these kids left their cars for like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So they were in the hole before the lawsuits. $2 million. That's $2,019,069.
Yeah, it's a shitload of money by today's
And
standards.
it was only because, again, one of them had a very large inheritance. So when you think about Jimi Hendrix's quote unquote iconic performance of the Star Spangled Banner, I think they say there's about 10,000 people there to see it. And the Who write Teenage Wasteland was there looking back, remembering what they saw from the stage. People fighting over food. Remember, food is also hard to find. Water wasn't potable on the new site. You had the same sanitation problem that you had. And another thing you had was people leaving, because they had mud, leaving sleeping bags. Like, I can't carry it. It's like cement.
Yeah.
So again, the cleanup, the damage that was done, these are all non-working facilities. These are all things that these guys are used to. 94, a very similar thing happens. Chain link fence. Someone cuts a hole in the chain link fence. And I think 164,000 people had tickets, and like 350,000 people were in attendance. So
Wow.
you got almost a couple 100,000 people getting in for free. So again, when you have overflowing porta potties, people dancing in the poo and throwing the poo on stage. I'm sure all those bands got trench mouth and God knows what else. But what we remember for 94 is a couple of quote unquote iconic performances, which is Green Day. It's kind of their coming out party. It's also the year they come out. And 9 Inch Nails has a very, very big performance as well in 94. And also, and this is just my opinion, I'd love to hear what you think about this. Grunge is deemed quote unquote important music. And because it's deemed important, there's this kind of throwback nostalgia to the 60s. So this festival has a lot of nostalgia in it. And it's just looked upon as not a logistical nightmare of people playing in feces, but a triumph of this throwback to the greatness of 69.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess, I mean, that makes sense. I think it is funny that was like, they were just really lucky that the 25th anniversary of Woodstock was right when grunge was like right on the edge. Like there were just like all the big records, all the big bands like in that genre were right at that moment. Because yeah, it's like important. I mean, again, it's like what is the genre really, and what would you call those bands as they evolved? You know, like I don't know. You know, those are the bands that also were responsible, in my opinion, for bands like Creed and Nickelback. I mean, you know, they. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love me some Seattle music from the early '90s. There's some just amazing records, but you know, where that ended up, probably in part because of the marketing around grunge and people saying, "Hey, what if we, you know, jar up, you know, the Pearl Jam vocal sound and the Alice in Chains riffing, and you know, and let's you know," and then you know you have 20 bands at the latter.
You knew Stone Temple Pilots' first album out of this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was on the Twitter conversation.
Was it?
Yeah, someone was like, STP's not grunge. I was like, well, I mean, Core was a pretty grungy record.
That's the epitome. Yeah,
that was the sound, and it was not, it wasn't really predated by other stuff that sounded like that. So you can't really say it wasn't. Yeah, they kind of leaned more into what eventually was called alternative, I guess. But again, what the fuck is alternative? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I just go on a stream of consciousness with this big goatee singing. Yeah, that's a good
riff. Well, so someone says, what is Nickelback? A more radio friendly Alice in Chains? I think Nickelback is what you get from the Load era Metallica.
Yeah, that's a good observation too. I think I really just think that, well, Load era Metallica is what you get when Metallica listens to Corrosion of Conformity. It's like, I mean, you can just keep going back. It ends up being Black Sabbath, and then, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I know some people
Pepper
refer
Keenan
to
Corrosion. Let's get it straight though. Pepper Keenan years.
Yeah. But yeah, they have. I mean, that whole like grunge to post grunge thing. Like, again, I mean, grunge was not. It wasn't a genre. It was like a moment. It was like a period and a play, and maybe concentrated around places like Seattle, but it just it didn't have like, I mean, it all evolved out of that really quickly. I mean, it took a couple albums for most of them to not sound like that anymore, and so I don't know what
do you think. I put 94. I'm working on a second half to a piece I wrote last year about hardcore, and there's a couple important years. 84 is an important year for hardcore music because it's the second election of Ronald Reagan, and it's kind of a defeat for a lot of those hardcore bands as well because they're pushing against this conservative government.
Yeah,
and 92 is kind of the triumphant year of winning, quote unquote, which is why I think Bill Clinton policies can get passed so easy with people kind of applauding it because the bad man was gone and George Bush Sr. But 94 is the year that Cobain dies, and coincidentally, it's the year that Green Day comes out with the Dookie. And I think Dookie, for better or for worse, kind of redefines the way we look at punk music, and we put a new label on it and call it pop punk. So it's major chords, extremely hooky. But I think punk always has been, to a certain degree, even hardcore is kind of hooky.
Yeah, sure.
But their hooks, maybe it's the big time production, as everything sounds a lot better with the sheen of a real producer in a real studio.
That is true.
Compression, what is that? So I put 94 as a very pivotal year for the year that counterculture is just outright sold. Grunge is a way of selling counterculture and making it seem important without it being important. And by the time you get to 1999, we have bands like Blink-182, The Offspring, who had been around for a little bit. We already saw this kind of third wave of a party ska, No Doubt, who toiled in obscurity for the majority of their career. Hits really big, and I think a big reason why this music can thrive is because of the financial prosperity due to deregulation in the 90s. This is also a time where a lot of the attendees at Woodstock 99 are college students, but this is a time where when you walk onto a college campus, some asshole is going to give you a t-shirt and you sign up for this credit card.
Right.
We're giving out credit to everybody. Credit, get your credit.
Yeah.
So when I think of the 90s, especially the mid to late 90s with Sublime, No Doubt, The Offspring, kind of the first wave of Warped Tour bands. Warped Tour, for those that don't know, nobody went to Warped Tour when it first started. And if you would have went to Warped Tour when it started, you were going to see like No Doubt. I mean, it sounds like a big deal now. No Doubt, Sublime. Who else played the first Warped Tours?
That's a good question. I don't remember.
Before they broke.
Probably, yeah, because that was late 90s, right?
The first year was like 96.
Yeah. Okay.
Dude, Bradley Noel's still alive, and he died.
Oh yeah.
97. Yeah, it had been around for a minute. So by the time we get to 99, number one, new metal has become a force. Maybe we can say the first. We're not going to get into the proto new metal records, but Korn comes out about 94.
Yep.
Deftones come out about 94, 95. When is Limp Bizkit's first album?
I don't think I'd heard of them till maybe 97 or later, but that they could have had a record out before then. Frankly, I'm not real. I don't know really much about them.
Orgy.
Oh yeah, I remember them. Yeah, sure.
Orgies, mid to late 90s. So this stuff has been around for a minute, and once Cobain dies, a certain door opens up to new disaffected youth that maybe aren't into plaid as much. Marilyn Manson definitely. I would lump him in with new metal just because he blows up around the same time. Those riffs are very new metal-esque, in my opinion. I don't know if you disagree with that.
No.
So by the time we get to like 99, I mean, new metal is a profitable force in music, but the big selling bands are nostalgia acts like Santana. He has one of the biggest selling albums of 99.
Yeah, that was like his biggest record ever, I think.
Oh,
yeah, it's like by a long shot.
I'm sure he's got checks he hasn't cashed yet from that. Yeah. Oh, another one. Oh.
He's got his ASCAP set to not send him a check till it reaches 6 figures.
So when you put a music festival together now, if you look at something like Coachella, they don't give a damn where you sit in the genre category.
Yeah.
Rap, sugary sweet pop music. They don't care. Can you bring butts? Are you good for tickets? But Woodstock has an image because this is the music of the counterculture. So when you're putting it together and you're looking for rock groups that aren't, country is also a huge selling thing at this time. Shania Twain is selling a lot of records.
Oh yeah.
There was another, was it Trish Yearwood? I went through the top 40 records of that year, and I was shocked to see how many were country, teeny bopper music, hip hop. Will Smith, Willennium came out that year.
Greatest album title ever. Oh man.
And the number one album of 1999 was Millennium by the Backstreet Boys. But all of this teen pop isn't there, mainly because those fans probably not going to be a good mix with 11 and 12-year-old girls and 20-some-year-old guys.
Yep.
Number one. And number two, they don't drink.
Yeah.
And your parents ain't staying for 3 days.
Nope. Hell no. I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine if your daughter looked at you and was like, Dad, we're going to the 3-day festival? Be like, we?
think the most we can do is the Paw Patrol live, 1 hour. That's good.
No, honey, you got to show up late for these things.
Yeah, you don't want to be the first one at the gate. Just
So there's a theory that the lineup was stacked with aggressive bands that worked the crowd into a frenzy. What is your take on that?
I don't think I buy that. I think that I'm actually pulling up the list because I don't remember everyone that was in it, but I know that there were some they named in the documentary. But like, just looking at each night and each stage, it's like, okay, I'll just go by new metal. There's Korn, there's Limp Bizkit, there's Rage Against the Machine, there's Godsmack. Actually, I didn't even know that. Was there too. That's funny. They don't even mention all the new metal bands, but I mean, to me, I don't see even in the documentary, they talk about where the kind of like, spark points were, and it's like, yeah, Limp Bizkit was one of the more. I mean, obviously, from what we've seen in footage, seemed to be a lot of the stuff happening during theirs, but I mean, like the fires and stuff were after a candlelight vigil, like, so it's like I don't know if like you really can make that direct connection, and especially because you also can't make the direct connection when you've got a headliner who's going on at whatever 10-11 o'clock at night after the entire hot ass day, everyone's been drinking and just partying, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, how could we have predicted that all these 300,000 drunk people could act like assholes? Like, it's like, dude, I mean, I guess you can blame Limp Bizkit. I mean, not that I would defend them. I mean, I've never heard a song of theirs I liked, but I would at the same time just say, I don't know. Like, there were a lot of bands this could have happened during, and it didn't happen during Insane Clown Posse, apparently.
And they were pro wrestlers.
Yeah, my money would have been on them. I would have been. That's where things would get weird. But no, I don't know. I just think I don't know, man. Like, it may have lifted the energy a little bit to the point that people were willing to be a little crazier, but for the most part, it's just like you look at what was happening throughout the entire festival, and you can really just see a steady ramping up of bad experiences and drunk people just snowballing for 3 days uncontrolled. Like, people just weren't doing anything to relieve that at all, and it's just, you get 3 days of exhausted drunk people. I don't really think that you could literally anyone could have been freaking Burt Bacharach and it would have been a riot. It's just probably would have been a worse one with him.
You want to hear something funny?
What's that?
His son works in festivals. I'm totally serious.
Nice. All right. Well, it has come full circle. There were a shitload of bands on Woodstock 99. Like, I'm looking at the list. I knew there were a bunch, but man, like, there were a ton.
Megadeth, it was the last band on one of the stages.
Yeah, on the west stage, they were right after Godsmack. So it was like Seven Dust, Collective Soul, Godsmack, and Megadeth, that is weird.
That is a 90s lineup for that act.
Yeah. Just strange order too, but Rusted Root was on that stage too, though. That's wild. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It seems kind of slapdash. Like, nothing. There's no stage that's other than where it says like emerging artist stage. There's not really it doesn't appear to be much of a rhyme or reason other than they were probably just trying to stagger their heavies as much as they could. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it looks like there was shit that went down during Shania, or not Shania, Alanis Morissette. Like, there was shit that went down during what's her name, the other 90s Sheryl Crow. Yeah, like, so I don't know. I think it's pretty silly to blame the music for it. I mean, I probably would get mad if someone made me listen to Limp Bizkit for an hour, but I mean, that's no why that happened.
Here's the last question I want to ask you, and before we get up to the champagne room, do you think that Woodstock '99 was the end to Boomer revisionist history? Before Woodstock '99, like I think we forget that. I was having this conversation with Conan actually, and J. Andrew World. They were going on about. They kind of brought this to my attention that Boomers kind of just ran advertising and movie production for a very well, they still do to a certain degree. But you know, you have movies like Forrest Gump, That Thing You Do, John Stamos playing with the Beach Boys on on Full House.
Yeah.
Do you think that that nostalgia is done because of '99?
That's a good question. I mean, it definitely seems like that's when you stop seeing it. I mean, it really kind of hit a wall right about there. So I mean, I think there's definitely some good possible truth to that. I really think that maybe, I mean, yeah, I think that could be right. I think that's a good observation I really hadn't thought of, but I mean, it definitely just dead stops right there. I mean, the 2000s were a completely different decade in terms of how any of that worked. You know, I think one of the reasons the 2000s, 2000 to 2010 was a weird decade. Like people don't really think about how much like strange, like everything changed very quickly, mostly due to the internet and the way things, the way people communicated and connected, and the way people, engaged in commerce. But I think that, I mean, maybe that was also kind of heralded by some of that a little bit by what happened. It's just, it was like, it's over, let's figure out what's next. And we spent
world didn't end.
Yeah.
Remember the world was supposed to end.
And I think years.
All the documentaries I watched, there's more than just the two big ones. There were so many things that came out right after.
Yeah.
Not one thing mentioned this. It was the millennium. And there was a feeling that 2000 was a great unknown. We can laugh at it now.
Yeah, sure.
2022.
Yeah.
But let's remember Y2K.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I worked at a Sears right in late '99, and we had a no return policy on generators. Yep. It was
like people were like, dude, what's gonna happen?
Yep.
I was on a call-in show. I do want to ask you this. I lied. I guess there's one more question. I was on a call-in show, my buddy Marcus call-in show, and he asked me this question. And I would love to hear what you have to say about this. He said, let me ask it to you. Shit, what am I doing? Do you think anything would have been different in '99 had there been camera phones and social media?
Oh, hell yeah. I think it would have been very different. I think, whether or not you could have stopped things from happening altogether, I doubt it. But the outcome, man, I mean, there's so much to that. Like just the world at large, if we had that kind of connection, period, it would have been very different. I think Y2K itself would not have been much of a thing. I also think that something like Woodstock '99 would have come out completely different. I think that there's just no way to avoid that. I think maybe one of the good things about everyone having a phone, I mean, there's a lot of good things about everyone having a camera. I fully endorse this. I think it's important. It holds people accountable. How much the government agrees with that is up to question. But the things that happened there probably wouldn't have happened the same if people were watching in that way and putting it out there in that way. Because even MTV, You can see the slow ramp during Woodstock where they sort of just gloss over the things that are happening. It's a lot of what's his name, Chris Connolly being like, "Whoa, these guys are getting wild." Anyway, let's talk to Anthony Kiedis. And but it's like, I mean, they that would have been in everyone's face right out of the gates had there been cameras on the ground for that, because I think MTV had every reason not to make it look like a complete disaster because they were also capitalizing on it. So you've got Ananda Lewis and Chris Connolly and I don't know, Kurt Loder or whoever the hell was there, just constantly diverting attention away from any nonsense that's happening. And finally, the fires are what made them have to turn cameras towards something. But yeah, I think that's a great question though. I think social media and camera phones would have drastically altered the outcome of that.
I definitely think they were a huge factor. Another huge factor as we go, something to think about when you guys think about why one festival is successful over another, and people try to put it in generational terms. And I don't really think there's a big difference between the hippies of 69 and the people of 99. And for anyone that thinks frat boys dominated the population, as someone that's worked at festivals all over the country, that's just what they are. Who the hell can afford to go to them, right? They're very white. Even the hip hop ones. Coachella does something that Woodstock kind of tried to do and didn't nail, and that was have a map, a plot that was interactive. Didn't work the way they thought it was going to work. Music festivals, and I write about this in the piece, are literally ways to lock you in a facility for 3 days, usually the size of a small city, and take your money. And Coachella did something, quote unquote, right, that Michael Lang never figured out. And that was the interactive nature of the grounds. And after I wrote the piece, I sent a pre-release copy out to some people, and one of the guys I sent it to is an industry guy, and he said, "Jason, I really love this, and I was at the first Coachella because a friend of mine actually put it together. He's an old school, he's a filmmaker, punk dude, he's older than me and you, right?" And he goes, and they had a map from a kid's, it was like a Nickelodeon thing. And he goes, that's still the basis for how they do things. And this, I've worked Coachella many years. It is such a sea of commerce that I don't care. I've done, Coachella goes 2 weeks and then it's Stagecoach, which is a little smaller.
Mm-hmm.
There's never an act playing that has the attention of everyone. There's always thousands of people buying shit, be it beer, be it merchandise, be it a meal. You can't go 5 feet without an experience. And
right.
This is the late 90s is the moment in 2000s when we get into experiential marketing. Buying things being an experience. Oh, look, I can buy it with my phone and it makes a little funny sound. That's so cool. So when we think about music festivals and failures and greed and blah, 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 they're all greedy. The reason why Michael Lang felt comfortable to cut costs in sewage, water infrastructure, is because it was never a problem before. People have to remember that was never a problem before. 94, people are backstroking and boo-boo. Why is it going to be a problem in 99? Right.
Yep.
So someone says libertarian culture dumpster, pretty much. So hopefully I can fix my computer problems for the champagne room. We're going to have a deeper dive conversation about new metal. Pascual has way better tour stories than me. We definitely get to tell some tour stories. music stories. So it's going to be a fun champagne room. If you haven't done it already, patreon.com/Bitter Lake Presents. I'm going to turn on the phones so we can have people call in and ask probably Pascual music questions. Because again, his music career has been cooler than mine. But again, Pascual, every chance I get a chance to say this on there, I want to say it. Honored that we're friends. Me and Todd were talking the other day about you. Like, you don't know how much you saved the band by just being you and showing up to that woman's house that night in Albuquerque. So love you, brother, and I'll send you the link short. Well, you already have the link. I'll see you in the champagne.
All right, man.
Thank you, guys. If you haven't done it already, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell. Pascual Romero will be here tomorrow night with the Mau Mau Hour, and we are out.